Director at Island Innovation. I am based in Santa Catarina Island in the south of Brazil, and I'm very happy to welcome people from all over the globe to this session today. I see a lot of activity in the chat, so I encourage you to use the chat function to introduce yourself, to tell everybody where you're joining from, and make any comments during the session. For questions, please use the Q&A function, and your questions will be addressed by our moderator, Ollie. I'm very happy to present this session titled Island Education Going Digital. This session is sponsored by our long-term partner and friends at the Edge Foundation. Thanks again, Ollie. And just before we begin with this session, I wanted to remind you that Island Innovation is a sustainable development consultancy primarily focusing on islands. Our services include events like this one and the Global Sustainable Island Summit, which is an in-person conference, strategic communications, capacity building, and we are trusted by clients around the globe. And if you're interested in learning more about our work, please reach out to us using the contact information that will be available for you in the chat or at our website at any time. We will have now a poll, I believe. I want to understand where you're joining from, your interests as well. So I'm gonna ask you to answer the poll for me. We are asking what your gender is, what your region you're connecting from, and what sector you belong to, and industry as well. This helps us know each other better. So I'm gonna answer as well and give you 2 minutes to submit your answers for us. And then I'll share the results, of course, with you. I see people already sharing their location in the chat. So I saw someone from Ireland just now, the UK. My colleague Maria joining from the Azores. Where else? Where are you people? Puerto Rico, Papua New Guinea. This is amazing. Poland, Turks and Caicos, Mauritius, Trinidad and Tobago, Madeira. Hi, everyone. This is awesome. Okay, can I see the results of the poll? Okay, so most of us here today are female. That's great. Many from the Caribbean. I think the majority is from Caribbean today, but we also have lots of people from Europe joining and North America. Most of us belong to the private sector, but we also have people from governments, NGOs, and academia. That's a very good balance here. And the main industry that we have here today is environmental services and or oceans conservation. This is very interesting. If you do not see yourself reflected on the results of this poll, please share more information about your work on the chat. We are very curious to learn more about our audience today. So now I will invite my moderator, Ollie Newton, to start this session. Ollie, please, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Thais. It's absolutely lovely to be here. And we've been sponsoring the education session at the Virtual Island Summit now for several years. And it's always an absolute pleasure working with colleagues at Island Innovation. I had the pleasure of attending my first face-to-face event this last year in St. Kitts, where we were working with young people from across the Caribbean and across the world, helping to think about how they might take leadership on climate action. And that was absolutely inspirational. We had a wonderful time there. I'm based in the mainland UK, but just for this session, I am actually in Scotland on the island of Bute, and I'm on holiday here, which is lovely, and really pleased to be joining you. But it felt like a fitting location for this session as well. Now, the Edge Foundation is an organisation based in the UK, working globally with colleagues to help improve the way that education connects to real life to help young people from all different countries to get ready for employment and get ready for their future. But we've always had a particular interest in islands and have been running the Island Education Network for the last 8 years. If you're based on an island or you work with islands on education and you're not part of that network yet, please get in touch with me in the chat here, and I'll put my email address in. If you'd rather email me, you're welcome. You'd be so welcome to join that. It's free to join. We meet several times a year online, and it's a chance to get to know other colleagues working in island education, some of whom you're going to hear from today, which is fantastic. As Toya says, the kind of theme for this session is going to be around kind of technology and the use of technology in islands. And I've always found in our work with islands that people are incredibly innovative, incredibly kind of inspirational in the work that they do, and often the kind of pure geography of the work that you do means that you have to use technology in innovative ways. That's going to be the kind of theme and the thread that connects through this session. You're going to hear from 5 amazing speakers, and we'll start to draw together some of the threads of what they're saying, some of the messages, and have a panel discussion at the end. So as Toya says, keep saying hello to each other in the chat, keep reflecting, add anything into the Q&A that you'd like me to ask our panelists. And without further ado, I'd love to welcome to the stage a great friend and colleague, Raj, who is the founder and CEO of Globe from Home, to tell you about his work. Raj, over to you.
Thank you, Ollie. So my name is Rajiv Rajam. I'm founder CEO of Globe from Home. We are a company that offers live streamed global education. We offer live streamed source-based climate education and sustainability. So essentially, what we do is we try to break the conventional walls of the classroom and take learners around the world to learn, connect with communities and peoples around the world, and learn from the source. So thank you, Ollie, for this for this opportunity to speak here at this wonderful forum. And one of the threads I wanted to pick up with digital education, and you mentioned digital education relevant to islands, is what kind of education do we provide? And that's something that I wanted to explore with you, if you're okay with that. So essentially, before we go into the challenges of basically the opportunities of using digital education in island nations or otherwise, what I wanted to touch upon was how we treat education currently in the conventional education system. And we are at the Island Nation Conference, and as John Donne says, that no man is an island. But if you look at education, we treat every nation it behaves like an island in terms of the education we provide. We are cut off. We teach mostly. We teach ourselves about ourselves mostly, and we are cut off from a lot of the information that is available to us from the rest of the world. I had a very interesting conversation, Ollie, very recently with a young person in India who said that he was learning to read and write Japanese. And I asked him if he was learning Japanese because it would help him in his career in the future. And he said, no, it was just because he loved Japanese stories, and that learning to read and write a language opens up not just the stories, but the literature, the philosophy, the culture. So he was not just learning a language; he was meeting a worldview, and that to me summarizes what the scope of what we do is essentially the amount of information and education that we have available to us, each of us as nations and countries. So if you extrapolate the same thing to learning in general, now we live in a world which is evolving very rapidly. Unprecedented changes thanks to AI. But we also live in a very polarized world. We live in a world that is divided, and we live on a planet that faces very urgent global challenges. So keeping these in mind, we need to question what kind of education do we provide before we get to the tech part of it. And going back to my example of my young friend from India, If you look at what we have, I mean, so the question to ask is, can we afford to continue to have education that is static, that comes from our own nations? Or do we need to actually step out of the classroom and look at challenges and knowledge that is available from the rest of the world? So, if we consider each of our own nations as nodes of learning in a global network, so for example, if you were a student of architecture, uh, of course, you would have excellent instruction from your own university or college or school, but what if you could now travel to Amsterdam and learn about the best practices that in architecture that come from Amsterdam? In the same vein, if you're a student of history, what if you could learn to the source of the subject and learn from the source? Now, if we go a little more further and look at global challenges like climate change. Now, we've had climate data available to us for the last 60 years, but we haven't really made any progress as far as climate change education is concerned, or for that matter, climate action that is relevant. So now let's bring this into context in terms of learning that provides learners with a global perspective. So, what are the kind of skills that we are going to do require in a climate impacted world? So we all know, and we know it in the island nations, and we know it in the rest of the world, that heat, for example, we are facing extreme heat, and every year, we are breaking new records with heat. So, what kind of skills do we require in the future in a heat impacted world? Is it enough for us to wait and just let heat impact us, or do we create skills? Do we create a task force that has the skills to combat heat? In the same way, do we create task forces for other climate adaptation and mitigation? And where does the learning for this reside? Because you can't learn about this in a conventional education system. So an example I have here is, for example, if you look at heat, for example, which is relatively more new to Europe. One of my colleagues is in Germany right now, one of my co-panelists, and she said it was quite warm in Germany. I've just heard from some team members who came back from Paris and who said that it was extremely hot this summer. Now, although Europe is getting hotter now, you have Sierra Leone, which has been facing heat for decades. And so by force of having to adapt, they have already evolved and innovated and found solutions to work around heat. So can you now learn from Sierra Leone about heat? If you're somebody who's working in urban planning or in nature conservation, can you go to the indigenous people in the Amazon and what can you learn from them? So the question is not really how do you make digital education accessible? That's the second part. It's also what can the world learn from each other? What can small island nations learn from the rest of the world? But at the same time, what can the rest of the world learn from small island nations? The wealth of knowledge that island nations have in terms of biodiversity conservation or working with nature or indigenous wisdom. So we all become teachers who can teach the other. And so that's one layer. And the second layer that I would like to add is the kind of education that makes change. So of course we design for content, but we need to design for connectedness, because this was our experience as a company that provides virtual education in climate change and green skills. What we found is that we started taking learners to different parts of the world to witness the impact of climate change in real time. And what was happening was we found that learners, whether they were in the US or in another part of the world, when they actually met with people and communities who were impacted by climate change, those interactions and that human connectedness is what really resonated. And that is what actually then inspired action. So that piece of the puzzle I was talking about, where we had climate data for 6 decades, but we didn't move. We found here that when you have education that also connects, it's based on connectedness, it has an impact on how learners take it and practically convert it into climate action.
Raj, thank you so much. That was inspirational as always. And just tell, because for those of us who aren't so familiar with your kind of day job, just tell us a little bit about kind of a typical way that a classroom of young people might interact with Globe from Home and the kind of experiences that you offer through those virtual experiences.
Sure, Ali. So, Globe from Home has been a company that has evolved over 5 years of experimenting with digital education. And as I mentioned before, we do storytelling or learning in a way that takes learners to different parts of the world. So, when learners join a Globe from Home session, let me give you an example of one of the sessions we do on fast fashion and climate change. So this is a session that deals with the impact of manufacturing on climate change. Now, one can learn about this by reading about it or watching a documentary. But in our case, we tell the story in a way that learners now travel. We start off in New York or London, where against the backdrop of the larger fashion brands, we talk about how the world produces 100 billion garments. We walk into a store, we look at how most of the clothes, 98% of these clothes, are actually manufactured elsewhere, then brought here, which is why brands are able to introduce a new line of clothing every week. But then we also learn how 60% of all clothes are thrown away the same year. And where do these go? Most of these clothes are now discarded in countries in Africa. So on the same session, in the same live virtual session, learners travel to second-hand marketplaces, which now receive 15 million garments a week. So you can imagine the influx of clothes. And then learners are able to travel through the market along with a local press center, speak with market sellers, understand what this whole invasion of clothes is doing to them and to their families. And then, of course, you understand that 15 million garments is not something that they would sell. So where do these clothes really end up? So on the same journey, we take learners to a landfill, a 30-acre landfill, which where all the discarded clothes that we have thrown away from here, especially in the global north, end up. They catch fire. The smoke goes into the communities nearby. So the knock-on impact of what we did to somebody who's 6,000 miles away becomes quite apparent on this live session. But then, having told this problem, Ollie, then we then take learners to another part of the world where you have organizations that are working on sustainability in fashion. So what is it that we can learn and change? So we've seen the problem, we've seen how people are impacted, and how do you then take away lessons from it? So that's the format of what we do at Globe from Home, whether it be learning about our sources, or whether it is learning about our sinks, or for that matter, learning the kind of skills we are going to require in the future. Experientially, again, sorry.
Thank you, Raj. I think that's so powerful. I think this is a theme that's going to come through a lot of what we're talking about today. But obviously, there are so many virtues to being based on an island. As you say, there are so many things that island nations can teach everyone else around sustainability, around education. But there are also challenges, and one of those is a geographical disconnection. You can't easily visit necessarily other places. So using technology to kind of bridge that gap to help young people who are growing up on islands to become world citizens, that feels like a really important theme, and one that I know quite a few others, including Kate, will come back to right at the end as well. So thank you so much, Raj. That's a great start to this session, and we'll come back to quite a few of those themes as we go on. I'm going to invite Arlene now to join me on the virtual stage and share some of her work from the Caribbean. So Arlene, do you want to pick up the story there?
Thank you, Ollie.
Thank you, Raj.
Thank you, Ali, and good day, everyone. It's certainly a pleasure for me to come from the British Virgin Islands and join in this very prestigious summit. I remember participating in the Virtual Island Summit several years ago, and it was really a rich experience. I'm certainly happy to be here today, where I will pretty much provide a snapshot of digital learning in the Caribbean, maybe more so the English-speaking Caribbean, with which I'm most familiar. And in so doing, I will use my context of the British Virgin Islands as a reference point. Please permit me to read from my notes as I seek to keep within the time frame. It was the American educational reformer John Dewey who once said, "Education is a social process. Education is growth. Education is not preparation for life only, but it is life itself." The evolution and introduction of digital learning technology, virtual learning, and more recently AI and other emerging technologies in the education space speaks to the transformative growth that education is undergoing worldwide. The Caribbean region, where I have lived for most of my life, is made up of hundreds of islands and keys with a total population of approximately 44.6 million people. And it is also embracing the technological advances in education while grappling with some associated expectant challenges. Many school systems and policies in the Caribbean region are guided by regional organizations such as CARICOM, or the Caribbean Community, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, or OECS, Caribbean Development Bank, Caribbean Examinations Council, or as we call it, CXC, to create harmonized education strategies from early childhood to tertiary levels. These regional agencies often receive further international technical and financial support from international organizations such as UNESCO, USAID, UNICEF, OECS, the World Bank, and others. For example, in a joint research report by USAID, OECS, and UNICEF in 2022, the agencies concluded that the Eastern Caribbean countries are now better prepared for digital education than they were in the past. The COVID-19 pandemic forced many school systems in the region to adopt emergency learning contingency plans, such as remote classes conducted in virtual spaces. When the British Virgin Islands education system experienced some shocks as a result of hurricanes in 2017, and as a matter of fact, we had two Category 5 hurricanes to hit us within the space of about 2 weeks. We were forced, with our small population of about 35,000 residents, which was spread across 4 islands, to resort to our digital learning or virtual learning system. Thankfully, we had prepared or had been preparing about 10 years prior in the eventuality of such a shift. As a result of those hurricanes, our country experienced about a 70% destruction to our infrastructure. And as a result, learning was forced to go online for about 1 year, and in some cases, even longer. Thankfully, the transition was not as difficult as it probably could have been, as we were already using smart boards in classrooms, PowerSchool technology for grading and administrative purposes, and more recently, Google Classrooms at the primary and secondary levels. As I speak, the British Virgin Islands Education Ministry has already rolled out a plan for 2025-26 school year that heavily focuses on digital literacy and innovation, where students are not just users of technology, but are equipped with skills to become creators of industries. As a result, the school's curricula are being revamped to even include courses in robotics and coding at the upper secondary levels. Advances in the use of digital technology is even more evident at our tertiary level of education. Having myself recently served as a vice president for academic affairs at our community college in the British Virgin Islands, the H. Laverty South Community College, I can attest to the fact that the institution has made significant progress in embracing technology in education while being mindful of its potential drawbacks. To meet the needs of its diverse student population, the institution now offers various modes of delivery, such as blended, HyFlex, and online learning. It also incorporates a plethora of integrated technologies that are interactive and engaging, such as learning management systems, student information systems, e-book platforms, video conference platforms, Microsoft Suite 365, interactive boards, and much more. Furthermore, to ensure integrity in the online environment, the HLSCC, as well as other institutions within the Caribbean region, they have integrated tools such as lockdown browsers to counteract cheating, and of course, the widely used Turnitin system to reduce instances of plagiarism. All in all, based on reports emanating from Caribbean school systems, it can be concluded that for the most part, our country governments have embraced the new and emerging frontiers of digital technology, virtual learning, and more recently, AI, recognizing their transformative powers to revolutionize education in the region. To illustrate my point, our Caribbean Examinations Council, or CXC, recently outlined an artificial intelligence framework that will be built into its assessments while ensuring that the necessary structures consider fairness and equity, quality assurance and validation, capacity building and professional development, data governance and stewardship, risk management, as well as other legal and ethical considerations. To conclude, it is also fair to say that the pace of change varies from one Caribbean country to the other, based on a multiplicity of factors such as funding and budgetary constraints, ICT capacity development, internet access, and the need for targeted training to build capacity, along with other cultural nuances, such as attitudes to reform from various actors across systemic constructs. According to Andreas Schleicher of the OECD, artificial intelligence, robots, and even blockchain are poised to transform how we teach, learn, and run our schools. School closures in the recent past has certainly forced us to dip our toe in the digital waters. And now we must work hard to make that further leap from remote classrooms to smart ones. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arlene. That was absolutely great as usual, and it was uplifting to hear like a positive legacy of COVID. It's left so many negative challenges for young people across the world, but the fact that it kind of accelerated the use of technology in the way that you just described, I think, is at least one kind of small silver lining, which is great. I just wanted to pick up, and this is a theme we'll come back to in the speaker conversations at the end as well. But I want to just pick up this point about kind of equity and technology, and just to ask you to reflect a little bit about kind of the state of that in the Caribbean. You mentioned a little bit about kind of different use of technology in different islands, and are the things that you see that could be done to make a real difference there to kind of address the kind of any inequalities that remain in kind of use and availability of technology?
Yeah, yes, Ollie. And I see it as I travel through the Caribbean island chain from time to time. Equity in technology is really a challenge, but thankfully we have a lot of harmonized frameworks in place within the region. As I mentioned before, two organizations such as CARICOM and OECS, which are also connected, as I said earlier, to those international organizations. And I think it's basically to sort of help to level the playing field so that all students can have access, so that all teachers can have the training that they need, so that all governments can be comfortable in terms of the reforms that need to take place within individual contexts.
Thank you, Arlene. That's a really helpful reflection. I think we're going to come back to that point in the discussion as well. And I see that Alan's raised it in the Q&A as well. Thank you, Alan, specifically in relation to digital connectivity. So we're definitely going to pick that theme up. Arlene, that was great. Thank you so much. And I want to cross the world again and invite my colleague Stephen to the virtual stage, who is head of school at the eSchool. And I'm going to have the pleasure of meeting Stephen and colleagues later this week for the first time. So that'll be a treat later in the week. But Stephen, do you want to share a bit about your perspective?
Yeah, no, thanks, Ollie. I'll just share my screen. I've got a few slides that I'll just run through while I talk. Hopefully you can see that coming through now.
That's come up well, thank you.
Great. So yeah, my name is Stephen Graham. I am head of school at Eascall in Scotland. So it's great to have the opportunity to share with you a wee bit of our story today. So if I just flash up on the map, this is where I'm talking to you from today on the Isle of Lewis of the northwest of Scotland in the UK. So it's the smallest of Scotland's 32 local authority areas with a population of around 25,000. And geographically, we are very much on the periphery and on the outer edge of our country. But in a digital world, the periphery can be very much front and centre, as you will see. eSchool is an online learning service. School is the Scots Gaelic word for school. That's the native language of our island chain. It's a language that I speak myself fluently, and it's maybe not the first language of most of our island residents now, but it's very much a key part of our heritage, and we felt it was appropriate that our name reflected that. And it's something that features in our curricular offer as well. So eSchool has always been about removing barriers. It's always had equity at its core and at its heart since it started. And it very much started here in the Western Isles as a local solution to a local problem. We've got a range of secondary schools here in the Western Isles, the smallest of which has under 100 children, and the largest of which has over 1,000. And so in one of our smallest schools, the one maths teacher in the school left, and they couldn't recruit another maths teacher for love nor money. And the council here, they hit upon the idea of using a teacher who was hundreds of miles north, but who had capacity to deliver lessons through video conferencing. And from there, the young people engaged, they achieved, and the council hit upon the idea of being a bit more proactive, a bit more strategic, to see if they could establish a service to add an extra layer of resilience to the system to protect our schools from being vulnerable to these shifts in staffing that take place from year to year. So because our schools are so varied in size, the curricular offer can really vary. So you can be very limited, I suppose, in terms of what you can take in terms of subjects if you're a learner in one of our smaller schools. And so that again was a key driver for eSchool to try to broaden the curricular offer and widen the range of subject choices available to our young people to improve their progression pathways. Our young people are probably our biggest export as an island authority. And there are worrying projections for our working age population. So we need to work together with partners to create well-paid and fulfilling careers based here in the islands. And equity and opportunity is a principle that's at the heart of what we're all about. eSchool has grown significantly. We retain our headquarters here in the Western Isles, but you can see there on the map on the right, our staff can be found right across Scotland and indeed further afield. And the young people who we're engaging with now are far and wide across our country. You can see there on the map on the left, a kind of a pin representing every school that has engaged with eSchool in the last 12 months. Now, being able to teach digitally and work remotely is something that appeals to a number of different groups of teachers. Teachers in islands who are quite limited in terms of the opportunities that are available to them locally, they can gain additional work through ourselves by teaching online. Also, we attract teachers who are maybe semi-retired or retired, some who have caring responsibilities, some who maybe would find it difficult in an ordinary classroom situation. We've got one teacher, for example, who's got a hearing impediment, who would really struggle in an ordinary classroom setting, but with a set of headphones designed for somebody with that condition, she can continue teaching. So there are a number of teachers who would have been lost to the profession otherwise had they not come to work with ourselves. Moving on, COVID has been mentioned already as part of our session. I said earlier that removing barriers is something that eSchool is all about, and COVID was indeed the biggest barrier, I think, that affected not only island learners but every learner across the world. But to be honest, COVID provided us with an opportunity to progress with our vision on a national stage, and I think we made 10 years worth of progress in 10 months. During lockdown, our small island team was at the forefront of the Scottish Government's national programme of support for schools and learners. And from the work done during COVID, there's a legacy of programmes that continue to this day, funded by the Scottish Government on an annual basis under an umbrella of what's called the National E-Learning Offer. And these programs mean that island learners, as well as everybody else in Scotland, can take part of a range of different programs, which are designed to complement what schools and local authorities would be able to provide. You can see some details of some of these on the slides just now. We've got an evening and holiday study support program that gives senior learners access to live webinars to study and to prepare for exams. We've got a work-related learning program that allows for industry and business experts to enrich the classroom experience, no matter where you are in the country. Whether you're in a rural island community or in an urban community, it just levels the playing field and allows for anybody, any partner to come in and enrich the classroom experience there. We've also got an online provision for interrupted learners. We're seeing this growing year on year, sadly, that there's an increasing problem with young people who are disengaging from learning, who are opting to come away from school. And I think it's an issue that's affecting young people from all communities, not just in the UK, but across the world. Mental health, anxiety, a lot of our young people are maybe on the autism spectrum, or suspected to be on the autism spectrum, and they really struggle with a physical school environment with high sensory overload. So we found that by taking an online approach, our young people, they can learn from their safe space with a lot of these anxiety triggers removed. And we've seen real success there, in some cases, in the majority of cases actually, where young people re-engage with learning on their terms, and step by step, slowly but surely, they get back into the way of learning, back into a routine, and they achieve. And it's been the most gratifying piece of work that I've been privileged to be part of in my whole teaching career, to see some of these young people. I'll pop a link into our evidence of impact report into the chat shortly, and you can read more about who we are and what we do. But I mentioned the Gaelic language earlier. One of the things that we're keen to develop is to broaden the range of subjects that are available to young people in island communities and as well across the whole of Scotland. The Gaelic language is something that you can study only in a small number of schools in Scotland. But we have an online offer of Scottish qualifications in Gaelic that will allow for any young person in any community in the country to be able to access that course. And we're looking to work with Scottish Government to develop that offer and have a menu of subjects that any young person in Scotland could be able to tap into, because we know that if a young person is able to get the subject choices that they want, that they'll be more engaged, more motivated, and that ultimately that will follow through in attainment and achievement. Some young people in some of our smaller island schools, they may end up having to choose the least worst option in the column structure that they're faced with. And by working together in partnership with others, by using digital tools, digital solutions, we can improve learner pathways and hopefully prepare young people for the particular career that they're wanting to go on, go ahead with. You can see in the map on the left there the locations of our Gaelic students, and you can see there as well that the cover of the brochure that we put out this year to try to get schools and local authorities to think about what's available out with the local school There are a number of challenges to overcome, and we're working with Directors of Education and Scottish Government to work through some of these together. The biggest challenge is probably funding it all, shortly followed by the challenge of different timetables. But by aligning timetables, even just, to a small extent, it opens up possibilities that will improve progression pathways for our young people. So in short, I suppose what we can see with eSchool is an organisation that had its origins in an island community, designed as a local solution to a local problem, which has now very much gone national and is seen to be, leading the way, and not inward looking but outward looking, in trying to remove barriers for young people, whether that's in terms of what's available locally or what's the struggles and issues that young people are facing. So yeah, it's grateful to have the opportunity to share with you something of our story, Ollie, and we look forward to some of the questions that come through in the chat. So I'll stop sharing there and hand over.
That was great, Stephen. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it actually built really nicely on some of the themes we were just talking about with Arlene as well. So, that story of COVID kind of not accelerating your work because it was already going, but really accelerating the prominence of your work. And I love that story. I use this quite often when I'm talking to people on the mainland about the importance of the work that islands are doing. The fact that the Scottish Government came to you guys because you were already the experts in this area because of the geography that you're kind of adapting to say, can you guys lead when COVID hit around the kind of online work, which I think is amazing. And I also think, again, I see this a lot in my work, that the rural areas, the coastal areas of mainlands share a lot of characteristics. So when I'm talking to the UK government about the approach that they might take with a small town that's in a coastal area, somewhere like Grimsby or Morecambe Bay, if people know the UK, the approaches that worked out are the approaches that you and colleagues have so expertly designed for the island context, because those areas are remote and because they need this kind of support. So I just wanted to ask you to say a bit more about one area just before we move on, which is just, I really like the point that you were making about the fact that you are using technology not just to kind of deliver to young people, but to be able to bring in faculty and experts from elsewhere. Just say a little bit more about that, because that feels like a really strong theme that we'll want to pick up later as well.
Yeah, it's been the experience of island children. Myself growing up in school, you were very limited in terms of what was available to you on your doorstep, and you maybe couldn't see the connections between what you were doing in the classroom and the world of work. So this DYW Live offer is all about developing the young workforce, and by allowing for partner agencies, those in industry, to beam in essentially to schools, allows for schools to pick the times that suit them, so that a class can benefit from seeing how the learning that they're doing in the classroom applies to the real life world of work. So you're no longer limited to those who are on your doorstep. You can go anywhere in the country and indeed beyond to just enrich the learning experience essentially. So it's all about, again, removing barriers. The classroom walls were a barrier in my day growing up, and in a digital world, there's no reason why the classroom wall should be a barrier. We can bring anybody in, and we can we can work in partnership with other schools, and we can enrich the learning experience for our young people in that way. So it's it's been a good work, and my colleague Richard, he leads on that, and it's growing year on year. So we get we're seeing that it's certainly adding value to what schools are able to do locally.
That's brilliant, Stephen. Thank you so much, and a really nice kind of overall thought to take away from this session around kind of using technology to break down those barriers. I think that's very powerful. We'll come back as well to the point you made about technology and native languages as well, because that'll be relevant to islands in different parts of the world too. We'll be coming back to the panel with questions, but I see Meg has asked about how mainland schools can partner with island schools. So that's something that we can come back to at the end. I know Stephen will have a view, and I know that Kate, who's our last speaker, is going to be talking about something that's very relevant to that. So you'll be getting some input on that soon too. Stephen, thank you so much. I'd like to welcome to the virtual stage Eliana, and we'd love to hear from you next.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hi, Eliana. Yes, loud and clear.
Perfect. Thank you. So, good morning, good afternoon to everyone, and thank you to all the panelists and H Foundation and Island Innovation for allowing me to talk here today. I'm here to answer the question raised in the panel from the last year, call it communication, community communication, where I will share a project that is really dear to my heart. My name is Eliana Vero, and I have 2 decades of being working with multidisciplinary artists. And I'm also the CEO of Radio Galaxy's Epitome. And from the island of La Gomera and the Canary Islands, but I'm based in Oslo right now. I'm collaborating with institutions like CEFE in Cameroon, MIA Museum in Norway, and my dear team includes environmentalists, economists, artists, and programmers. Bear with me. I believe we are seeing the first slide, right?
We'll pop the slides up for you, Eliana, so you keep talking and the team will pop them up and you just say next slide when you want to move on. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you. Yeah, well, with the first slide, I want to present and also raise the question of what if you receive a letter from Mother Earth? So here's a video. Thank you.
Dear blossoming stars, let me share a secret with you. The poetic realm on this planet is shaped by the natural kingdoms. These kingdoms can feel, sense, and smell how you feel. Nature is always ready to play with you and share great mysteries, but only if you approach her with an adventurous and gentle open heart. Minerals, plants, and animals are the key to unlock the lovely hidden secrets within you. Nala and I only ask you for one thing, to collaborate with each other, overcoming the challenges and reach up to the levels where magical doors will open, so you can play, learn, and share your knowledge with other galactic brothers and sisters. Please feel free to find your own way as a group, to communicate the knowledge you gather from me, and remember to be creative. With great love, Mother Earth.
Oh, thank you. Bear with me. This is going to be funny. We are going to the second slide, please. And here is where I make a formal invitation to join Message in a Bottle, a long-term project that supports archipelagos in the field of education. Today, I just want to present what I consider a core case or priority for Europe, Asia, and the Caribbean. Due to modern businesses and island territory, we are facing the loss of ancestral knowledge, while classrooms are overcrowded with teenagers from multiple backgrounds. This is exactly where teachers struggle to find a common language, even with their own faculty world. This proposal combines something that is called Tech for Good, art, and environmentalism. This is an alternative to the cuts that it have been in the creative subjects in science schools and to mitigate the consequence of climate change. Our slide, next slide, please. Our vision is to build bridges of knowledge and friendship that is shared in a message between rural areas, towns, and cities, where young people will present their different social and environmental landscapes. Here's, in this slide, you can see exactly how again that involves nature look in reality. And well, I promise it's really funny when you're there. We are promoting a physical and a digital format for this message. And well, we are going to the next slide. Thank you. I will start to talk a little bit in this slide. What I was a research on example of peace. I was looking for examples of what peace or community looks like. I found diagrams, the dove, and some images with the peace symbol. So I changed my mind and I started to look for examples of war. And guess what? A lot of violence pictures there. So from that act of curiosity, the peace zone arrived, and this is a place where I would like to practice, or to put in practice, to explore holistic communication, and it will be also a quest for peaceful meeting spots where we want to create the workshops. We are moving on to the next slide. And well, from 2023 and 2024, we put it the idea into the pilot, and we got 5 months in between. 2 schools who were talking, around 30 students from different nationalities and ages were sharing their knowledge. And we made this possible thanks to public and private fundings. Well, what we figured out is like there's similar projects to this one, and they are all lacking the long-term continuity on them. And well, what I can say is like kids are ready for teamwork. We are presenting a program for teenagers from the age of 10 to 17, and we offer around 20 workshops, 7 intense months. Our goal in the future is to equip participants, kids, teenagers, with the skills necessary to share their knowledge with kids in situation of displacement and refugee camps. Here is something that I really like, because it makes me think on the last slide, of course, it made me think about the struggles, you know, and sometimes it can feel overwhelming. So the first step is to truly listen, and this can change lives. We are committed to build long-lasting networks that help both teenagers and professionals. The magnitude of this proposal, we understand that is both scary and exciting, but we are committed too. So my name is Eliana Vero, and I invite you to connect with me if this resonates, and because we are open to complement projects around the world. We believe in the power of collaboration, transparent fundings, and trustworthy networks. So organization is key. Thank you.
Eliana, thank you so much. That was really inspirational. And you brought up a few new themes, which I think will resonate with a lot of the colleagues here, both those who are speaking and others. So this idea of kind of connecting across cultures, finding the things that unite us, I think is really, really powerful. And that goes for the connection between young people who might be growing up on different islands, but also between young people who are on an island and people who are on the mainland. I think this connection, I know this is very, very kind of dear to colleagues at Island Innovation as well, but this connection between kind of climate change, climate action as the kind of driving force behind this generation of young people is something that fires them up, gets them excited. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about the power you see in kind of social action. So the kind of traditional models of education see young people sitting in a classroom, digesting facts. What you're talking about here is much more about getting hands-on, and young people, even in the age, even in the ages when they're learning, they're also able to make a difference, to come together, to campaign for things, and that's kind of part of their education. So, say a little bit more about kind of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. Well, the scary part here is like we need around 44 millions of teachers around the world. And I guess we can supply that with teenagers who are really learning how to build teams. And once they kind of get a flow to understand what they're doing, sharing their knowledge, what they're learning actually on their school with kids who are in displacement, this is the main goal. But we need to reduce the noise and also give. Yeah, I believe in teenagers.
Yeah.
They are the best questions, best interconnections. I really agree with them.
I feel just the same. It's not about saying, your ideas don't matter, you're still learning. At that age, they're having lots of exciting ideas which can have a real impact in the world already. And I saw that very strongly with Ari, who I saw is on the call as well. My colleague from Island Innovation, she and I were running the event in St. Kitts that I mentioned at the start for young people, and just the passion that we saw from those young people about the changes that they wanted to make, not only on their islands, but also in the wider world, and the impact that they were already having on the politicians, on the people in their countries. So absolutely, I think it's about kind of giving them a real practical impact, not just saying, you're learning, you can do this when you're an adult, but believing in them at that stage as well, I think is really powerful. Eliana, thank you so much. We're going to bring you back to the conversation at the end, and we've got one final presentation, and I'm delighted to welcome my colleague Kate to the stage to give that. Kate.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ollie. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to some of you, I imagine. I'm Kate, and I am from the Climate Change Legal Initiative. I normally would be joining also from Scotland. I would be able to look out my window and see where Ollie is right now. But today I happen to be on mainland Europe, and I'm joining from Germany. So I will just briefly talk about a program that we are beginning to reimagine called Island Explorers. I'll give a brief overview of the original program as it was developed within the University of Strathclyde. I'll talk about some of the challenges that we found and how we are hoping, with the support of the Edge Foundation currently, to reimagine what a future program might look like. The original program of Island Explorers, in its original incarnation, it was an interdisciplinary educational program, and it was looking at using the very unique context of island life to introduce primary school students, pupils from ages 7 to 12, to global sustainability challenges and specifically the UN Sustainability Development Goals. Island Explorers was originally developed really as a public engagement project that was run by the University of Strathclyde, and it started out with 2 Glasgow-based primary schools, which then later grew to 9 schools in the city, so mainland schools. We later added a couple of schools in some of our Outer Hebrides. But the program really was looking originally to connect Scottish mainland students with their peers on islands in diverse cultural and geographical settings. Initially, the program looked at a 4-year progressive program, and each year group focused on a different sustainability challenge using the context of different islands. And each year went through the same process. It included an introduction to the island, exploring the sustainability challenge at issue, and then investigating solutions, designing and building prototypes if they had physical solutions, and then presentation and evaluation. So the first year, just to give you an example, of the 4-year program focused on oceans plastics as the sustainability problem, and they were connected to a school on Hawaiian Island in Honolulu. The second year, then, the sustainability challenge was on sustainable energy, and they were connected with a school in St. Vincent. The third year was food security as a challenge, and they connected to a Scottish island, Great Cumbrae, directly across from me. And then the fourth year, they had as a sustainability challenge marine biodiversity, and that was they were connected there to a school on Ile de la Réunion. The partnerships that we created really did promote cultural exchange and help the pupils to understand sustainability through the experiences of their peers living in different island environments. A really key component of the program was that we created comprehensive resources for both the pupils and the teachers. And that allowed teachers and schools really to enter into the program with no cost and minimal resource preparation. And that really was a major attraction, especially to schools that are really resource strained. And we all know teachers are a very valuable resource for us and for our children, and we don't really want to put that much more on them on top of what they're already doing. So having resources available for them that really required very little additional work on their part was one of the most attractive pieces. And they were, like I said, a key enabler of the program's expansion as well, but adapting the resources to suit different types of classrooms became a challenge to scalability. One example was when we did expand to some of the smaller, more rural schools in the Outer Hebrides was composite classrooms where you have different years physically in the same space, each working on different challenges. And then, of course, also having to look into translation of some of those materials into Scottish Gaelic. So we started running into some scalability issues really early on. The resources that we developed and provided were a teacher handbook, accompanying class PowerPoint slides, pupil workbooks, practical resources, everything that they needed to be able to run the program. But because it was designed to be low to no cost for those folks, it was also designed not to rely heavily on technology. Now, what that meant was that the connection between the mainland schools in Scotland and their partner schools in the islands was not very regular. In the original program, it really only worked that the schools were connected through an initial video call to get to know each other, and then they shared information back and forth without direct real-time interaction. It was impractical for every school to be truly connected with their partner school beyond that video introduction because of technological problems. Schools really liked that international collaboration, but we ran into issues with time zones, of course, language barriers, issues of equity, and then also the ability for the schools to take this program forward independently was also, of course, a challenge. And all these things require much deeper consideration to the practicalities of how you connect schools around the globe with each other. So going forward, some of what we're looking at, the unique aspects of the original program was really the opportunities for the schools to engage with peers from around the world. And it is only through digital technology, obviously, that will be possible. The barriers and challenges that we're dealing with include, I mentioned time zones and language, but there are so many more issues. And we need to also think really, really carefully about how we can and want to then use more digital technology and imagine how we might create a better program going forward. One of the things that we're looking at doing is rather than connecting mainland schools to island schools is shifting to an island to island focus, where we're connecting island schools to other island schools in different geographic locations that may have different experiences and examples of their sustainability challenges. But we do then also have to consider additional challenges. Some of that was not wasn't really a problem in the beginning because we only had initial video conferences. But if we wanted to have an expanded program, we have to consider things like access to stable Wi-Fi. That is a problem on Scottish Islands frequently, as I'm sure Stephen can attest as well. We have lots and lots of storms on the west coast of Scotland. So stable access to Wi-Fi, access to multiple devices. You can imagine if a classroom joins on a sustainability project with another school, and they maybe don't all want to work on the same sustainability challenge. Maybe the older kids would like to work in smaller groups. Then you have to have access to multiple devices in a classroom. The same would be true for a composite classroom where there are multiple years in the same physical space. And so we have some accessibility issues there. More regular engagement, of course, then also requires much more active engagement with digital technology. How and why and where could we use more digital technology? AI might have a place in the project, but then we also really need to understand what are on the other side the unintended consequences of really going down the road of focusing on that type of technology, because then we have to also consider, of course, the environmental impacts of digital infrastructure, where those physical digital infrastructures end up being located. And we have issues around environmental justice, climate justice. So these are things that are really, really important to keep in mind. And of course, questions of equity always. Innovations going forward must, of course, maintain a balance and a balanced approach that always puts inclusivity and equity at the center of the program. So we have lots and lots of open questions. So I think that's what I'll kind of end on, some of the big questions that we have going forward also. And they are, how do you overcome resource barriers? How do you encourage or include the use of digital learning tools and AI without having those unintended consequences? How do you expand the program beyond, what we have decided was originally based in Glasgow on the STEM projects? And then, of course, how can we overcome barriers that have negative impacts when we really only want the positive ones?
Okay, that was absolutely wonderful, and I'm so looking forward to continuing to work with you to make some of that a reality in this kind of second phase. And I just wanted to kind of pull out some of the themes that I think you brought out really strongly that have underpinned a lot of what we've talked about here. So this theme of kind of collaboration between islands, kind of making sure that young people feel a kind of part of the kind of citizens of kind of that community of islands, the kind of power that's vested in kind of practical ways of teaching. So not just kind of talking at young people, but getting them really involved in projects, getting them to think of the solutions themselves. This is something that we're really passionate about at the Edge Foundation on islands and around the world. This is the way that we should be teaching. And I think the power of using sustainability as a jumping off point, there's nothing more important for the future of the world, but there's also nothing more at the forefront of the minds of this generation of young people. So if we're talking about making school engaging, making it exciting, making it relevant, there's nothing that can make it more relevant than talking about sustainability. So Kate, thank you so much. And I'm going to invite the other panelists just to join us back on stage and to kind of just to broaden out this argument and discussion a little bit. There's some really great questions in the Q&A, and I wanted to pick a few of those up. But I wanted to start with something that's kind of very dear to my heart, which is just about, how can we use technology to teach kind of practical vocational subjects? It's harder because kind of academic subjects where you don't need to be using a welder or making a dovetail joint, those are easier to do online. But Raj, I wanted to ask you to comment on this first. I know you've been doing some work on it recently, and then Stephen, maybe I could come to you to share a little bit about the kind of vocational offering that you have at eSchool as well. Raj.
Surely. It's a great question, and it's one that we have been experimenting with for a while. So, for example, one of the courses that we teach is, or we tried to solve for, was how do you create a green task force in renewable energy? And we realized that you could. We have one program which teaches learners how to make solar panels. Now, conventionally, solar panels are always, taught in a physical classroom. You have to have physical instructors. But we realized in due course of time that you could do it differently. So we started opening up the instruction in a way that the teaching is still done remotely, but you have a lab assistant or a technical assistant on the ground assisting the learners. Now, this suddenly then opens up access to something physical, which requires physical intervention. It made the classrooms much bigger. You could have TVET centers across Africa join a program like this, which is taught remotely, but you have somebody locally who's assisting the students with the panels. Now, again, while virtual learning has its limitations, we found that with a little bit of innovation, you can open up not just this course, but I mean, we teach a course on how to cool down communities, and that involves painting cool roofs. And again, there are best practices that exist in Mexico and New York, but you can teach them remotely with the assistance of associates. So, as Stephen mentioned earlier, also, I mean, there is scope for innovation with virtual. We found there's a community in the Amazon which was cut off from the mainland. They're 4 hours up. The nearest town is 4 hours upriver by boat. But we found that just by having an internet access, you could bring education into that sort of community. So yeah.
Great. Thank you, Raj. Really powerful. So kind of combining the online, the technology, but then with some interaction face to face and on the ground as well. Stephen, do you want to come in on that one as well? And then I'll ask if others want to come in on that point. Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Ollie. I think working in partnership is key to success. We would fully acknowledge and recognise that there are a number of things that you can't but teach with somebody in the same physical space with you, and a number of the kind of certificated courses that we deliver within our own kind of Scottish qualifications framework, they require hands-on experience. So whenever we are delivering science courses, technical courses, we'd be relying on somebody on site to teach the kind of practical aspects of it, and we would focus on the theory. But that being said, there are sometimes ways in which we can use technology, visualizers, to allow for our teacher to see exactly what techniques are being deployed by the students as they're handling things or working on things. There's also health and safety considerations to bear in mind. Now, if we have somebody on site who's got the necessary kind of lab certificates or health and safety certificates, then our specialist should be able to direct the teaching and lead the learning online, and have somebody, as Vaj was saying, who can facilitate in the physical space with them. But we tend to try to find a solution, and usually by working in partnership we can overcome the barriers that kind of we come up against.
Thank you, Stephen. That's absolutely great. And we've had a couple of questions in that I want to just tie together. So Renato and Alan, and this has come up a few times in other conversations as well, have been asking about the role of technology in kind of further education, lifelong learning, adult education, and the opportunities there. I've certainly seen from some of the islands that we work with around the UK a really powerful use of this in further education and higher education. To take one example, I was in the Isle of Man recently, and they've recently transformed the training of paramedics on the island, which was a real challenge, and they had a very much an aging workforce and a challenge recruiting, and they've developed a course with a mainland university where students spend a week over on the mainland each month, and then the rest of the time they're learning remotely back home on the Isle of Man. They've really used that as a chance to, a bit like you were saying with your example, Raj, combine kind of online and face-to-face to in a really practical profession to get people up to speed and ready for that. But I'm sure there are other examples as well. Arlene, do you want to share something about your perspective on that from the Caribbean?
Sure, Ollie. I'll be happy to. I do have a deep interest, as you know, in TVET, and in this digital era, we see lots of opportunities where we can collaborate, even here in our context in the British Virgin Islands, and especially at the tertiary level. When it comes to credentialing, for instance, in areas such as marine and solar technology training, I would say that our institution, we've been making significant progress. It's not as challenging as some of us might want to think in terms of having persons on the ground, but also connected in a virtual space where learning can still be effective and where our students can still benefit. So it's an area that we'll continue to explore, and I like the opportunities here at the Virgin Islands Summit where we can connect and and even share best practices across our various contexts. Because as we all know, TVET is definitely here, and I think a lot of especially our tertiary institutions, they're seeing the need to connect further education opportunities, lifelong learning, and definitely skills training, in these various contexts. And I think a lot of our curricula, we are now expanding into those various areas. And so I think any opportunity to explore how we can benefit from the digital learning as it connects with TVET would be much appreciated. So I'm really thankful for this discussion in this very important area.
Thank you, Arlene. And that also nudges the discussion into another important area, which is the use of technology to train teachers as well, which you haven't kind of talked about so much. But there's such an important role there to make sure that people who are living on islands who are aspiring to become teachers at any level, but including in TVET, can kind of benefit from the opportunity to learn from experts in the world wherever they might be. Eliana, do you want to come in on this one as well? I know you do a lot of work with kind of older teenagers, and what are your reflections about kind of the role that technology and these kinds of innovations can play with training older teenagers and adults as well?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking that the new technologies are quite new. We are still learning how they work, and combining this with ancestral knowledge is like how we can understand how technology works and then apply it also and how we interact with the natural world. There's a case from 2017 where two different devices start to create their own language after a couple of hours of talking. And I believe that humans, we can develop different systems for communicating each other. This raises a question, for example, on how does a tourist understand or get get what he wants on the supply store, or how babies are communicating with their own parents. So we start from the basics, to be honest, and also to promote nature. We need to slow down the need of communicating and starting to listen, and from there bring a poetic or creative idea into place to start to be less rationalized. This is my input.
Thank you, Eliana. That's great. Kate, I wanted to ask you, you're welcome to come back on either of the two things we talked about, but there was also something that Meg had raised in the questions, which was just about kind of advice for schools on the mainland who want to partner with island schools. And obviously, that's been the bread and butter of some of your work on the previous iteration of your work. So yeah, feel free to reflect on the other two issues, but also any advice for Meg and others who might be interested in collaborating would be great.
Oh gosh, that's a really big question. As we're working to reimagine what this kind of a program could look like, part of the reason why we're shifting from the original iteration of having mainland schools connecting with islands was because we had a cohort of schools in a city, and then every school was connecting with the same school in the island. So every school that was doing the first year of the program was connecting with the school in Hawaii. So it became a little bit almost like the island schools were a test subject almost. It didn't have the same full interaction that we really would want, which is why we're looking to shift it to island, because of the island lived experience as a baseline for the pupils. I think there is a fantastic way of doing it. We're not focusing on it currently, but I think it's a really important question to ask, right? Because mainland pupils will have a different set of sustainability challenges that directly impact them. It is incredibly important for those children to understand what different lived experiences look like, even within their own country. As an example, right, Glasgow schools connecting with island schools in Scottish Islands is already a completely different lived experience. I don't know the answer to the question. There's no easy answer to the question. I think the biggest learning from that for us was that the interaction and the learning has to go both ways. It can't be a one way, only the mainland schools are sort of extracting the knowledge from the island schools. It has to go both ways. One of the most beautiful things about the program that we really want to take forward is the children were able to find solutions for each other would have been nice, right? Rather than all of these schools in Glasgow coming up with solutions for the schools on the islands. And they were lovely and really interesting, and they were so engaged and so interested, and they learned so much about a different way of living and different sustainability challenges, but the other way was missing. And so that is what we're focusing on going forward, and that is where the having the lived experience of being on an island, being the baseline, and then your challenges, your culture, your language, everything else will be the learning, the mutual learning. And one of the other things that it was so fun is that originally we focused only on STEM, right? And so it was the solutioning were around actually coming up with physical solutions. And they built prototypes of, I'm stuck on the plastics one, of different machines that could scoop up plastic off the beaches or out of the sea. Really, really beautiful. And they built these wonderful prototypes. But a lot of kids were also coming up with solutions that were community-based solutions, societal solutions, political, legal solutions. And so that's one place where we really want to expand what's available to even focus on for the teachers: language, culture, debate, society. And so we really want to expand beyond STEM because the children are naturally leading in those directions. They see where the issues and the problems are, and they want to find solutions. We should empower them to do that.
Thank you so much, Kate. That's wonderful. Believe it or not, we're coming towards the end of our time together. And I wanted to just give each of my panelists just one kind of final opportunity to share kind of a reflection. So one of the big themes that's come out of this has been around kind of equity, both the kind of power of technology to address issues of equity, but also some of the challenges of unequal access to bandwidth, to devices. And so I wanted to ask everyone for just a reflection about what change you'd like to make. There's a lot of powerful, influential people at the Island Summit from island governments around the world. What would our ask be to really take what we've been talking about here to the next level and make sure that every young person who grows up in an island setting has access to some of the amazing opportunities that we've talked about. I'm going to come around in the same order to collect that. So sorry, Raj, you've had the least chance to think about it, but I'm going to come to you first to get a thought on that.
No, I've had a lot of time to think about this, only because all of our work deals with virtual education, and you're right. I mean, and I found what Kate said quite. I resonated a lot with what she was saying about not just providing education, but getting everybody on the same platform to be able to interact with each other. This kind of an education has impact only if everybody's connected in the same way and we have equity. Now, at Globe from Home, what we've been trying to do is design for low bandwidth. Anyways, we do not use augmented reality or virtual reality or any of the more high tech kind of things, only because we want to keep it more accessible. This is about human connectivity. Now, having said that, you still need to have access to schools need to have access to devices and to connections, and to that end, I believe that education needs to join hands with industry to highlight this need and get them into partnerships to be able to provide the infrastructure, which isn't it's not, considering all things considered, it isn't a prohibitive sort of cost if corporations were to come on board, industry were to come on board to provide with internet access. All we need is a classroom where students can come in and have a projector and an internet connection. That's what we've been doing in a number of countries with very low connectivity. It's not even about providing mobile devices to every single child. It's all the children coming together, learners coming together into one classroom, being able to access things on a projector and a screen. So that to my end, and that's been an appeal that I've, I even as a virtual climate education company, we've been consistently going out and talking to industry to try and bridge that gap.
That's great, Raj. Thank you so much. Arlene, do you want to just reflect briefly as well?
Yes, I'd just like to touch on the power of networking and where it can lead. I'm using you as an example, Ollie. I first met you at in 2018, I think, at that meeting for employers and education. You were very instrumental in forming the Island Education Network. And from that, here we are at the Virtual Island Summit. And I must say, having gone through those experiences in recent years, I see the importance of networking more. And even here in our Caribbean context, sometimes we tend to work in silos a little too much. And I feel there's a lot of benefit, as Raj was just saying. How can education join hands with industry even more? So I think for me, that would be one of the big takeaways. And maybe when you package our presentations, I would like to present it to the powers that be here, and even further afield in the Caribbean region, as to how we can benefit even more from the power of networking as it relates to digital education, AI, and so much more in the virtual space. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks, Arlene. That's wonderful. And as you've experienced from the Island Education Network, it always amazes me when somebody new joins from a completely different part of the world, and they talk about their experience and what's happening on their island, and everyone else is nodding and being like, "Yep, that's exactly the same as here. That's exactly the same." So that kind of shared context can be so powerful. Thank you, Arlene. Stephen, do you want to have the next word?
Thanks, Ollie. Yeah, just I mean, there's so much I could say, I suppose, and so much I could talk about. But island authorities, local councils, and so on, they really value autonomy and being able to come up with bespoke solutions that meet their needs. But sometimes that autonomy can work against the potential that there is to work together in collaboration. So I think my plea would be to always keep that kind of working together as a key factor in any kind of autonomous decisions that are taken. We see that there's a number of things that can work against providing a better offer for our young people in terms of their education, choice of platforms that local authorities maybe choose, timetabling decisions that are taken. All of these things can work against being able to aggregate classes that would either support young people or broaden their curricular offer. So it's just, the potential is there, assuming that digital devices and connectivity are in place. That's all good and well. If I mean, it's only really going to maximize its potential if we've got that common platform and we've got commonality in terms of how classes are timetabled, so that we can get young people together irrespective of their geographic location. So that would be my kind of ask, I suppose.
Great, really nice practical one. Thank you so much, Stephen. Eliana, what would your ask be?
Yeah, I will promote cross-cultural learning as a URL to explore, because we have many pragmatic projects, and there is also a possibility to implement some experimental into that pragmatism. So private sectors, public sectors, and even humanitarian organizations should be more in contact. So it's not only about creating trust among teenagers, but it's also to create trust in how we can connect different organizations, institutions, and for the benefit of having more transparent communication in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Eliana. And last but not least, Kate, your last reflection.
I'm surprised no one said funding. We can't do anything without funding, but I think it's absolutely crucial to focus on supporting teachers and making new, additional, interesting ways of teaching and interacting with the pupils supported and available, and not feel like there's just that much more being put on teachers. I think that is really, really important, because if our teachers aren't supported, then our pupils aren't supported.
I love that. Really nice, clear place to end. So yeah, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Several people have messaged me in the chat to join the Island Education Network, which is wonderful. If anyone hasn't had a chance to and would like to, feel free to drop me an email or add me on LinkedIn. I'm very passionate about this area, so feel free to drop me a line. So last thing to say, just a huge thank you. Absolutely brilliant panelists. And we really, really appreciated your input. And huge thanks to the Island Innovation team. I hope the rest of the summit goes really, really well. If you want to share more about this session, the recording will be online straight afterwards. And we'll also be writing up a little article with kind of key points from the speakers as well, which might be helpful too. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your days. Enjoy the rest of the summit. Thais, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ollie. Thanks all the speakers. This was a very interesting session. I loved listening all your comments here in the background. And since we are speaking of education, I just wanted to remind everyone that Island Innovation has just launched the Sustainable Islands course, Strategies, Finance, and Leadership for Innovation. This is a 8-week online learning community designed for professionals working or transitioning into roles that support sustainable economic development of island territories. And you can learn more about the course in the link that is shared on the chat. And our next session will begin in 5 hours. It's a fireside chat, climate resilience through responsible social protection. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.